focus on hitting your goals in every area of your business. Remember, the universe rewards the bold. A leader has to take the risks.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Wealth on the Beach podcast. My name is Daniel Alonzo, and I'm your host. And again, we're bringing you some of the brightest, the most successful people around the world. And I mean, literally around the world. I mean, this guy's from Australia. His name is Robert Brus. Is that right, Brus?
You got it, mate. Hey, how are you?
Did I get it right? All right. I just
want
to make sure. But hey, I just want to make sure I got the name right. He's the founder of Go All In, a podcast centered on deep dive conversations with guests to learn from their adulterated failures and euphoric successes. He has interviewed big names, even Grant Cardone. Love Grant Cardone, friend of ours, on a podcast, and people from all walks of life with his amazing all-in stories that listeners can draw inspiration from to do whatever it takes and to live life to its absolute maximum potential. So we're going to get to know Robert a little bit better today. So Robert, tell me, man, what is it like to live on the beach in Australia where the weather is beautiful and swim every day and have that freaking awesome life, man? Tell me about it.
Good day, Daniel. It's the life that everyone dreams that Australia is. And it really is. It is. I live in a little bubble is the way that I describe it. I'm literally where I'm sitting. I'm maybe 150 meters from the water. In one of the most spectacular beaches in all of Sydney called South Cronulla Beach. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful place, but it wasn't always this way. You know, nothing was always this way. It was always a bit of an older and dingy suburb. And, you know, back in the day, you know, 20 years ago, it wasn't like it is now. It was a bit rough. The buildings around here were a bit old and kind of decrepit, but it's really grown up in the last 10 years, and it's a very modern and very, very affluent suburb. We've had a giant property boom here in Sydney, and you know, the value of the property and the apartments around here has just gone through the roof. So all of those rednecks that used to live around here are really wealthy rednecks now. It's kind of cool.
There you go, man. I love it, man. And we're going to get into because you've been in digital marketing, business development. I mean, you know, connects industry experts, thought leaders, podcasters, connections all around the world. And so you got a great, healthy story about, you know, a lot of success stories and met a lot of great people. And so we're very interested about that. But as always, I like to kind of dive deep also and try to figure out a little bit more about like where you came from. You know, I want to know what your parents did. I want to know how you grew up, man. And you know, what was the young Robert like, man?
Well, interestingly, I grew up coming to this beach on the weekends where I live now. Mum and Dad used to live in the western suburbs of Sydney. Dad worked for an airline here in Australia. He worked for Qantas for 29 years. And my mum worked for various different companies here in Sydney, just reception type work, you know, raising me and my brother in between that type of stuff. She worked where she could. And when I got a little bit older, I always wanted to be in the military. And when I was 17, I packed up and said, see you later, sayonara. And I joined the Navy, and I traveled the world with the Australian Navy, and I was there for about 5 years. And I was wanting to be in the Army originally, but the Navy recruiter got hold of me and said, you don't want to do that, mate. You want to do this. And then I was out of the Navy into the Army. And so it was nearly 10 years in total in the Australian Defence Force. But I think you grow up a little bit, and running around with a gun and, you know, kicking indoors and doing that kind of gets old after a while, and being told where to be and what to wear and what hat to wear and how to cut your hair gets a bit old after a while. So I packed up and moved on from that. And that's kind of where my entrepreneurial career kicked off. And, you know, I believe Australia, you know, they call it the lucky country, and it really is the land of opportunity. I left the Army and left the military with two of my mates, and we started a business, and literally within 3 months, we had about probably 30 staff that were working for us. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, had more money than I ever knew what to do with in my whole life. And I lost the whole lot because I had no idea what I was doing. It was a really kind of fun story, but you know, my childhood up until that moment had been just beautiful. You know, I come from a loving family, loving parents, a great brother, everything you could ever ask for. So, you know, my parents gave me a good foundation for success.
And what did your parents do?
Well, my dad, he was a technical instructor over at the airline at Qantas. So as a little kid, he used to take me down to the jet base and you were around airplanes all the time. So I always wanted to be a pilot as well. And as I got older, the urge to do that was kind of less, but I am a pilot now. I've got a private pilot's license, and that's something that I pursued because my dad was a pilot as well. And it's something that I wanted to do. And mum, you know, she was busy. She worked for Armor Guard, which is a cash collection company. And I was really fascinated by my mum working for Armor Guard when I was a kid, because back in the day, it was very different to what it is these days. They drive around in the armored vehicle. You know, they make Hollywood movies about these armored vehicles getting robbed. I think that was the fascination of it, right? And she worked at the depot where the vehicles would come in, and they would count the cash in the ATMs, and they would count the money. And I would ask my mum what she was doing when she came home from work. She's like, oh, you know, how much money did you count, mum? What is it? Like, how do you do that? What is it? And they would load the ATM machines with $50 and $20 bills and all of that sort of stuff. And mum would handle millions of dollars in cash on a daily basis. And as a teenager, it was so abstract for me. Like, really? There's millions of dollars of cash in that vehicle and in that building, and you're handling that and putting it in the machines and doing all of that? It's kind of cool. And mum was always very sharing about those things. It was really good.
Oh, that's interesting, man. Well, it sounded like you had a great upbringing. I mean, were you a studious kid? I mean, were you really like into school? How were you as far as that went? I mean, good kid, bad kid? What would you consider yourself?
I was a good kid. I was a straight A student. I played lots of sport. I played rep sport. I'm a really good swimmer. I think I just got longer arms and legs than most people. And my dad was an avid swimmer, and he kind of got us into it when we were younger. So I developed that, and early on, and I got into triathlon. And then that was a bit boring, that sport, because you kind of do it by yourself. And I played rugby league for a long time as well. I played at a rep level. But when you join the military, that kind of all goes away. So I don't think I ever really got to spread my wings properly from a sports perspective, because in the military, you just don't do that. And particularly in the Navy, you're on a warship. So that kind of all goes away. In the Army, one of my side jobs in the Army, if you like, was as a physical training instructor. So I was one of those guys walking around with really short shorts and tight T-shirts telling everyone what to do. And that was kind of fun. My very last posting was at the Australian Parachute School, and I was the fitness instructor there. So you'd have 300 baby paratroopers come in, and the first person they see would be me. And we would run them through their fitness test and make sure that they were there to do that. And at first it was all pretty gung-ho and bravado like that, because I'm trying to make my mark in a new job in a new location. But I quickly realized that these people were a little bit scared, you know, because they're on a parachute course at the parachute school. It's a scary thing to do. And the last thing in the world I need to be doing is giving them a hard time. So I learned to dial that back a little bit. But, you know, in terms of sport and health and fitness, yeah, I've absolutely always been into that. It's a daily non-negotiable for me.
And I mean, so the military basically shaped you. Would it say it shaped you for entrepreneurship and growing your company? And I mean, what type of things did you take from military that now you put into your business life?
Well, I definitely know how to be on time. That's the number one thing that I take away. You know, people ask that all the time. You know, you must be really disciplined. You must be really good at all of these sorts of things. And yes, kind of, sort of, you know, it took me a long time to unwind from it. You know, another way to describe that is to transition. And by that, I mean, you know, you don't have to iron your shirt perfectly. You don't have to have a perfect crease in your pants all the time. And they're the things that really shape you, right? It's not so much about the discipline, but it's about the habits that they teach you that are there. And I guess the biggest habit that I learned from it was, if you're going to do something, do it properly or don't do it at all. And that really set me up for success in business. You know, if you're going to iron your shirt, do it properly and don't muck around with it. Yeah, it's just very basic
so
stuff.
Well, I was just talking about it this morning. I don't know if you knew, but I have it's called Wealth on the Beach Club, and it's a
Yep.
coaching program. And I was just talking about this morning. It's the little things that really determine the big things. It's the
Yep.
little habits. It's the making your bed type. Little things that I think shape your whole life and especially I think as an entrepreneur. I was very impressed with you right now because you were on the podcast, waiting on the Zoom before I even got on. You know what I mean?
I was on time,
And
Seth.
that you were on time. Like, you weren't on time though. You were actually very early on time. So, and we always say, right? If you're on time, you're late. And so I just think that somebody like you is a perfect example of somebody that should be teaching business, should be teaching leadership, because you're the kind of guy, I can tell you, and I've met you and we've only known each other for 5 minutes now, but I would follow you. Like if you said, hey, look, we're going to go start a company, we're going to go start a business, you're the kind of guy that I would want to follow. And I think that's very, very important for all the listeners to understand. You don't have to be perfect. I think, leadership is not perfection, but there's got to be some sort of stability behind your actions and your words. Do you kind of agree with that? Is this making any sense to you?
Yeah, you need a solid grounding is the way that I describe it. And being an entrepreneur is probably the hardest thing that you could ever choose to do as a human being in life. And people think that they come from a job like I did. I made the classic mistake. Don't do what Rob did. And the mistake is I left a really stable job with, a career ahead of me, and left that job. My missus didn't have a job to go to. I had 2 small children. I had no source of income, and I, excuse the pun, but I went all in. I had no choice but to go for it. And sometimes going all in on something like that is not necessarily a good idea. What you need to do is get your ducks in a row first, get yourself organized, remove the financial duress that you might find yourself under, and then incrementally move towards your goals. Don't just down tools and have a tantrum one day and dive in and start a business thinking that it's going to explode and you're going to be a millionaire tomorrow, because it just doesn't work like that. And I really believe that the key to success is in its planning and in its execution as well. And I use, I learned a fighter pilot analogy a while back, just a military analogy that works for me. And anyone that's ever hung out with fighter pilots understands that they don't just wake up in the morning, come to work and go, well, where are we going, man? I don't know. Let's go out to the range and do something. It's an extensive process. What they do is they plan, brief, they execute, then they XGAP while they're doing it, and then they debrief extensively. And the planning and debriefing stages go for a long time. The planning stage is probably 1 to 3 hours. The debriefing stage can be as many as 4 hours. So for a 1 hour sortie, when somebody goes out flying, flying to point A to do exercise X to come back to point B, it's a massive amount of planning. And I've taken that into my entrepreneurial life, and everything that I do, I overlay that framework, I overlay that system for myself, which gives me some clarity, and it removes the uncertainty. And what it does is it gives me the opportunity to move forward and check as I go. Am I moving closer to my target? Am I getting there? Is it incrementally working for me? And I can test and adjust as I go, which is a really great way to do things in business. And it all comes from a solid foundation.
Oh, I love that, man. Well said. Wow. I wish we could, if you just heard that, rewind it, listen to that again, because that's so critical. I mean, I'm always talking. I mean, obviously I'm in money. I'm in the money game, and I teach people about their finances, teach people about how to, but the first thing I do is I say, organize, get organized, right?
Yeah.
Plan, have a plan so that you can execute that plan. But you know what I find, honestly, is I find so many people that are making hundreds of thousands of dollars with no plan and no financial software and no written budget and no, I mean, I sit down once a week. I mean, there's not a week that goes by that I don't sit out at least once a week for at least 1 hour. Now, there's some weeks that I plan for even longer, but at least once a week, I find an hour to sit down, review my plan, review my financials, review what's going on. Now I'm always checking my investments and things like that. But as far as I run my family life like a business. I run my family financials like a business. I don't wing it. And that's the mistake a lot of people make. Do you kind of agree with that a little bit?
Yeah, 100%. You know, if you're operating without a plan, you're planning to fail. It's really as simple as that. And I look at I deal with a lot of people in my digital marketing agency. Over the last 15 years, I've helped hundreds of businesses, all sorts of startups, and it's actually a pretty rare thing that people have got an extensive plan. And the biggest mistake I see people make with that, in line with your comments there, is related to entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are the worst for it. People that are business owners are slightly different to entrepreneurs. You know, they might have a physical business in the real world. They're not starting off, they're already established. So I want to put that aside and just focus in on the entrepreneur side of it. Because what I really see, I see happen with those folks is they have a plan to make the money. They've got an idea, and the entrepreneur side of it can kind of encroach into investing as well. I'm gonna put my money over here in this property, or I'm going to put it into this thing over here, and I'm going to make this money. And they make good decisions, sound decisions. They get the money, but now they don't have a plan. So as you say, I see people all the time, they've got hundreds of thousands of dollars. They made all this cash and it's really good for them, but what are you going to do with it all? You got to send that forth to go and create more babies. Otherwise you'll send it forth and go and buy a Porsche that you don't need, or some unnecessary things in your life that you don't need. So people always have a plan in the world that kind of I live in. They have a plan to make the money, but they don't have a plan to do something with it when they get there, because making the money is actually not always as hard as what people think. If you've got a plan to start off with, you can get going with that, and it's a little bit of a grind to get started. But once you get started, if you've made good decisions and it's happening like you were expecting it to, what are you going to do with it? So make a plan to do something with it. Otherwise, you're going to lose a lot.
When you started off with your digital, because I want to know more about your digital marketing business. If you can tell me a little bit more about that, and what you really do for clients and how all that works out. And then also maybe just kind of touch on maybe the beginnings of that, maybe any struggles that you might have had, how you overcame them. If you could just expound a little bit on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so just to be really clear, I'm not doing that anymore. I stepped out of the wheelhouse. I still do it in a consulting capacity, but I don't do client-based work on a day-to-day basis like I did with the agency. My brother and I work together, and that's a really cool thing to work with my bro. He's 5 years older than me. I always say, he's not going to hear me say this, but he's the older, the fatter, slower one, the bolder one. So I got all the looks, the speed, and the leanness. It's kind of fun. So I like to make fun of him. He just kind of shakes his head when I make those jokes. Anyway, my background in digital started in my first company way back in 2002 when I first left the military. So we kicked off, and my two mates got out of the military before me, and they'd started the company and they generated a bit of sales. And I said, boys, we need a sales team is what we need. So we hired a telemarketing company back in the day, and they started hitting the phones, and all of a sudden all the sales started happening, and our job was to go and fulfill. And very quickly someone needed to organize all of that. And that was me. I was an ops guy. And then I started organizing people, hiring people. And I quickly realized that on the phones, the girls making the calls, people would say, oh, well, what's your website? I'd be like, what's a what? That's how way back when it was, right? Like, I'm showing my age. I only look like I'm 25, but that's because I live a good life, but I'm quite a bit older than what people think. And way back when, building a website was expensive. It was sort of $30,000, $40,000. You have some ninja coding it in this thing called HTML that I'd never, what? HTML what? Or what? $50,000? No, we're not doing that. And I kind of learnt to do it myself. And that's really that's the genesis of it. If I trace it all the way back to its roots, that's what it was. It was out of necessity. So we built that website, got it going. It all did what it needed to do. And just over time, I kind of had other businesses, other opportunities, and hey, we need a website for that. Okay, I know how to do that now. And then I realized that I could get other people to do that, and I sort of fell into it. Then around 2007, this thing came out called the iPhone. Remember that? And I was like, what? An app? what, an app? What's an app? Wow, that's cool. Show me that phone. That's stupid, that phone. Those phones are for girls or something, aren't they? It's funny, right? Like you look back at I'm not having one of those. Look at my flip phone. That's way better than that. You know, I can kick my flip phone like a football. If I drop it, it doesn't matter. It's not going to break. That thing's going to break as soon as I drop it. Anyway, you know, after all of that kind of went away, I put my ego out of the way. I got myself this fancy thing called an iPhone and learned how to develop apps. And that's where it really kicked off. So to begin with, I was an app developer. I built a whole bunch of them for a whole bunch of people. And, you know, if I could rewind the clock, I would have stuck with that a bit longer because it was really lucrative. And then over time, that just redeveloped into other things. I had a business, had a bunch of people working with me and for me, and then it moved into sort of websites. And then it moved into advertising back in the day with AdWords, where you can get AdWords clicks for 80 cents, 50 cents, you know, pour it on, baby, and watch the traffic come to your website. And we'd work out how to get the traffic to convert. And then the advent of social media, it just kind of progressed there. It followed a natural progression like that, you know, and I've seen it all.
So Rob, yeah, that's what I was going to say. I mean, you've seen it all, man. I mean,
Yeah.
you were there in the infancy and kind of watched this thing grow into an amazing place that it is today. I mean, you know, I think a lot of my listeners know that I've only been running ads for a few months now. I built my company for 24 years. I built it with no advertising. I mean, literally word of mouth. And what's so fascinating is that if I could go back and redo it, okay, I would have started doing ads 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. Because in the last 3 months, Rob, because I've been doing ads, my personal production has gone through the roof, like mind-boggling. What I've always dreamt of happening is all happening right now because of one little ad and just Facebook ads. I mean, just crazy stuff. I mean, is this the future, man? I mean, is this the future for entrepreneurs? I mean, are people going to need to start figuring this stuff out pretty quick here?
Not to put a downer on the podcast or your excitement, but I got before I answer that question, may I ask you a question?
Yes.
So it's exploded. It's doing really well. Have you got a plan to keep the money?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm a financial guy, so yes, my plan is.
That's why I'm checking.
Yeah. I've been financially independent since 28. Yes, absolutely, baby, absolutely. So yeah,
I've seen it many times, right, where people exactly the same circumstance. Oh, I wish I'd done it ages ago. I wish that had happened. Is it the future? Again, not to put a downer in an overtone to the podcast, but things are changing. Things are changing rapidly and at a pace that normal people just don't recognize. And there's only two things that you can control in digital anymore. And one of them is your email list. And the other one is your podcast or your appearance on a podcast. Every other type of advertising and marketing that is out there is subjected to an algorithm. And that algorithm's owned by a giant company who only cares about you putting your credit card number in their platform so they use it. They don't care if your ads convert. They don't care if your campaigns are working or they're not working. All they care is that you put your credit card in, you pay the money, and you make it happen like that. So everything that is old is new again. And audio type activities like we're doing now and video activities like this, it's not subjected to an algo. So there's no way that Google or Facebook can really make money off what we're doing right now. So they don't care about it. I don't get censored. I might get edited in what I say, but I rarely get censored in what I say. So you can pretty much do whatever you want. So now it's more important than ever to have your own podcast, to have your own YouTube channel, to be on Facebook Lives and LinkedIn Lives. It's more important than ever to do those things because everything else is subjected to an algo. And believe it or not, email marketing and email communication is working better than it has ever in any time in history. And that's because the sophistication in people that do email marketing, in copywriting has advanced. The technology platforms have advanced. And I really think that we're on the cusp of living in a new world where public events are less than what they would be with the COVID-19 virus that's out there. There's a bunch of things that are happening. There's so much uncertainty in financial markets because of what is a worldwide pandemic. There's a lot of uncertainty around what's going to happen with businesses that require people to physically be there. So now more than ever, it's important that you get your ad campaigns dialed in. It's important that you get your podcast set up and running, and you're doing more and you're communicating more. Business is not going to stop. In 2 years and 3 years' time, you and I are not going to be sitting here talking about a pandemic. We're going to sit back and go, man, I'm so glad that I prepared way back then. I'm so glad I dialed in my ad campaigns. I'm so glad I dialed in those guests and I got those things happening, and I kept doing business. I kept investing, and I kept on winning. Because if you don't do that, everything's going to stop for you. And if you don't make the transition to digital right now, you're going to be left behind, because there's so much uncertainty in the world. So is it the future? Absolutely, now more than ever in any time in history, because of this pandemic that we're facing.
I'm so glad you said that, because I mean, this is like my constant message to all my guys, because I grew up in a business that advertising was really shunned, any sort of marketing, to massive amounts of people. But of course, they didn't have the internet 25, 30, 40 years ago. There was no internet. There was no marketing. There was none of what we have today. And this is in short time, realistically. I mean, in the history of the world, I mean, this has all changed within the last 10 years. I mean, 10 years, we got a whole new way of doing things. And, thank God a couple of years ago, I figured out a lot of the things that you're saying right now. Started my podcast, make sure my YouTube channel looks decent, made sure that I was doing my 3, 4, 5 posts a day on Instagram, and making sure that I'm doing lives every single week. I do 2 lives no matter what every single week. And of course, I'm just connecting like crazy. Tell me what a super connector is, because I know that's what you are, man.
Yes, a super connector is somebody who knows, well, by very nature of the name, knows lots of people. And the very nature of what I do exposes me to literally thousands of people on a weekly basis. Over the last 12, 18 months, I've built a network of podcasters, about 4,500 deep. It's a lot of people. There's so many people out there podcasting. It is absolutely incredible. And in my agency, we get people booked on podcasts. I help podcasters make money, and we launch them and all sorts of stuff. And just by its very nature, I engage with a lot of different people. The KPI, the personal KPI I have for myself, is to meet 5 new people and speak to 5 new people that I've never spoken to every single day. And some days I double that. Some days I triple that. Just, hey, how are you? What are you doing? And, inbound inquiries from a sales lead. I like to be at the cold face of my business and doing that continually to keep my skills sharp. And I can't expect my BDM team and my salespeople to be out there selling if I'm not out there selling and leading from the front as well. It's not all that I do, but it's certainly something that I do on a daily basis. And having that KPI and setting that KPI right at the very start of this business of 5 new people per day, to begin with, it was like really difficult. Like, who am I going to talk to? How does this work? But I just use LinkedIn, right? And do all of the outreach via LinkedIn. People connect back with me. Let's hop on a call. Sometimes I call them randomly and they're like, who is this? And I'm like, that random creepy dude from LinkedIn. And they're like, I thought I'd ring up and talk like a human instead of typing like a robot all the time. Have you got a second to talk? Yeah, I'd love to talk. How are you? What are you up to? Chit chat, chit chat. And that develops into relationships. You'd be amazed how that goes. And yesterday I was talking to a fella, his name's Andrew, and he was connected to me by somebody else. And Andrew's an ex-AFL football player. He played football ever since he was a little kid for like 30 something years. And, he now works in the speaking space. So he's a speaker, but he works with teenage kids and their parents, helping them to get ahead at school and to live a good life and to follow their dreams and pursue their dreams, like a mentor, right? But he's so damn passionate about what he does and just doing great work in the world. You couldn't hear a conversation like this and not go, man, that guy was unreal. What an awesome dude. He makes me want to do more with my life and makes me want to live more and give more and to try harder, to do all those sorts of things. And I hung up the phone. It's like 6 PM. And I thought, look at that. What a great way to end the day. And, I think the fullness and richness of life is dependent on the relationships that you have. And if you talk to 5 or 6 new people every day that you've never met, it enriches your life and it gives you that ability to connect and to be a super connector and just meet hundreds of thousands of people on an annual basis. It's a really fun thing to do.
Oh gosh, what an exciting thing. I mean, it just goes to show though too that we're living in a society. One of the things that me and my wife always talk about is, make sure you send handwritten notes.
Mm.
Because we're in this digital age, when somebody does something nice for you, or you make a new friend, or somebody comes on your podcast, maybe you'll get instead of just sending a text, you get a little note in the mail that says, hey, I appreciate your time and you're a great person. Or one of the cool things about technology now is I do get reminders when it's somebody's birthday, and not that you're going to catch everyone, not that you're going to get every single person, but it's still kind of nice every once in a while when somebody says, hey, happy birthday, or somebody says, hey, I'm thinking about you. Oh, I hope you have a great day today, man. I mean, it's going to be an awesome day, man. Hope everything goes great. It's just nice when you connect with people, and really it is a form of prospecting, because the truth is that, who do you really want to do business with? You want to do business with people you like. You don't want to, I don't even care if I have to pay a little bit of more. I don't care if this person is even more expensive. I like to do business with people that I like. And I think for the most part, most people do as well. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think when you start off business, you take any business you can get because you've got to get paid. You have to eat. You've got bills to pay, and that's just the way it is. But inevitably, all businesses start to become selective on who they work with. And I've seen that time and time again. And, as there's nothing better than building relationships with no kind of intent. I like that as well, which is kind of what you're describing, and not on social media, but maybe from social media, and that enriches your life. And I think people forget that life is happening to you right now, and you've got to make peace with where you are right now. And if you do that, all of these other wonderful things will start flowing into your life. And if you're listening to this, ask yourself the question: have you made peace with where you are today? Or are you reaching and constantly reaching for the next thing, for the next investment, the next pot of money at the end of the rainbow, the next business, the next relationship? What if you just stopped all of that, stopped the momentum of all of that, and just kind of rest right where you are in place? Because life is pretty damn good if you look at what you got. A pocket full of money, maybe not as much as you want. You got food on the table. You've got incredible relationships. And I discovered when I made peace with where I am, and I only did that a couple of years ago, that everything else just flowed to me. And it was just, oh my God, it's just the most empowering thing that you could do in personal development, is to make peace with where you are and then build on those relationships. Just gives you that fullness and richness of life.
And so when you look at because you've done a ton of podcasts and you've interviewed some of the most successful people in the world, do you see that, some of those characteristics? I mean, could you pinpoint maybe one or two characteristics that you see that's pretty common among the most successful in the world?
Yeah, that's a really great question and an important one. My podcast is called Go All In, and it's about the fork in the road. At some point in your life, you have to make a decision to go left, to go right, to go straight, or stay right where you are. And one of those decisions requires you to kind of burn the bridges and just dive in and go for it. So inevitably, I end up in a conversation on a podcast with people, talking to them about what their mindset was when they took a leap. And often people are forced into that. Often people have got no choice but to go all in. If you've been given a bad medical diagnosis, you have to face that head on. There is no alternative. You must go all in and commit to getting well. Otherwise, you're going to end up, well, what's the alternative? You might end up dead. And if you don't listen to what the professionals are telling you, then it's going to end badly for you. The common trait I see amongst people that want to go all in is that they know how to go all in. Human beings know how to do that. It's kind of a bit of a dichotomy in the way that I explain it. What's the most common trait you see in a Go All In podcast? Well, human beings know how to go all in. And what it means is intuitively people know how to commit. And what I've discovered, when people commit to something like that, they live up to their potential. And that word potential has a future connotation. So when you commit to something and you're really decided you're going to do it, you're moving all of your potential into the now. So with whatever you're faced with today, if you decide, right, I'm going to commit to this and I'm going to do it as best I can. I'm going to be the best at this. I'm going to try as hard as I can. All the potential that you have is brought into the now. And when that potential is here and now, the way I describe it is you give your best self to the world. When you give your best self to the world, you make the world a better place just a little bit each time you do that. So do that, because everyone wants the world to be a better place. We want less war, less crime, less violence, less everything like that. So if you personally make a commitment to go all in, you bring your potential into the now, and by doing that, you just make the world a better place.
And you know, look, I mean, people are thinking right now, they're thinking, man, you know, this guy, Rob, man, he's got it all together, man. He's got it all together. And look, you came from came from good parents, man. You had an upbringing. You weren't raised, you know, broke or anything like that. And, you know, some people are out there, they're thinking, you know what, I like this guy. He's a pretty cool dude, but, you know, he had it easy. He had it, you know, everything came to him easy. He didn't ever have any struggles or anything like that. But look at me. Look at what you don't know, Rob, what I'm going through right now. What do you say to some of those people that might say something like that?
I would say start with where you are right now with exactly what you've got. And don't spend a minute looking over your shoulder, because you can't change it. You really can't. And I might look like I've got it together, but like everybody, and I've met billionaires and spoken to billionaires on my podcast, they have challenges as well. You know, they have different types of challenges, and people that seem to have it all together, they have challenges, but just in a different context. And it's all about the relativity. And you know, it wasn't always easy for me, you know, being 17 years old, coming from a loving, kind and caring family, going straight into the military was a giant shock to my system. And that life is not an easy life. Being in the military is not an easy life. And my Navy career came to an end, and I went to something that was even harder in the infantry. And being an infantry guy in your early 20s is not an easy thing to do, because you know different. And it's really difficult to articulate that unless you've lived it. But it's not an easy life, because in some ways it's like being in jail. Got to be here, got to do that, got to wear this hat, got to go there, do as you're told, otherwise you're going to get charged, be on time to work, otherwise you're going to be charged. There's always a threat that's happening there. And after a while, it's actually a really unpleasant environment. And you know, I believe that we've all been given 24 hours in a day. You've got an opportunity to do the same things that I can. And if you get your head right, you get your mindset right, you create a plan for yourself, you brief yourself, then you go and execute, plan, brief, execute, like the fighter pilot, right? XGAP, where are you in relation to where you want to be? And then once you've finished that particular activity, that task, that goal, go back and debrief yourself. What did you do right? What went wrong, and how can you improve it for the next time? I believe if you get into that mindset and become mechanical about what it is that you do, you can achieve anything that you put your mind to. All you need is a plan and maybe a little bit of help. Get some help, follow some people, get some people around you that have done it all before, and you can do it as well.
Oh man, I love it. I love it, man. I seriously, I could do this all day long. I looked at the time and I'm going, man, it just flew by. And I'm intrigued by you. I'm inspired by you, Rob. You're a freaking stud. All right. You got a lot of stuff. You've done a lot of things right over the years. And what's cool about it, and again, none of us are perfect, but you know, what's cool about it is that you're just a reminder that if you make those simple habits, right? If you just create those simple habits, if you get organized, right? If you do what you say you're going to do, if you stay consistent in mind and body and soul, and, you know, you just kind of do those things right, that things could start to go good, and you can build a successful business, and you can build some wealth on the beach like you have done. All right. Cause you are actually on the beach. All right. So, you're an inspiring dude. Hey, look, I want to know a couple last real quick things. What's your favorite book, dude? What's your favorite book?
Oh man, I've just finished the Jocko book, Leadership Strategies and Tactics. I really like that. It's a nice reminder of how to be a good person in the world. And if you're in a leadership position, don't be a jerk. I really enjoy that book. Probably the most influential book that I've read over the last 10 years of my entrepreneurial career. Oren Klaff's book, Pitch Anything, and the new book that he's got called Flip the Script. So they're sales related books, and Flip the Script is the new version of Pitch Anything. You know, things have changed radically in the way people buy and sell these days. People understand the selling process, so you've just got to be really careful in the way that you're doing that when you're selling. Then he uses a methodology called Inception, which I've used and taken on wholeheartedly in my business, and it's increased my sales by probably 200% in the last year. So yeah, the Oren Claff material is something that I really love a lot, and I love to learn. I must listen to one audio book per week per minimum. And I'm just lucky that I kind of work from where I do. It gives me the opportunity with no commute. So I probably listen to about 10 hours of podcasting a week as well. All sorts of different things, everything from relationship podcasts to digital marketing to sales and stories. I love storytelling podcasts. I like a true crime one every now and then. I love a kind of a gritty story. And I love the production that they put together as well. That's fun.
It's fun. That's fun. Favorite movie?
Iron Man.
Iron Man. Oh,
Who doesn't like Tony
it.
Stark? Come on, man.
Seriously. Favorite book?
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
not favorite book. Favorite food. Favorite food.
I recently, I don't know if you've seen the movie Game Changers. I kind of rolled my eyes. I'm like, oh my God. And my missus is like, we should try that. We should go and do that, but I've been a vegan athlete for must be 9 months now. And when I first stopped eating meat and I quit dairy, so I don't really have a favorite food per se, but I don't eat dairy. Sometimes I eat meat. Every now and then I do that. It's on the rare occasion. But as soon as I turned vegetarian or plant-based, my PBs in my training were just smashed, and my energy levels went up, and my health improved. I lost weight, and it's a combination of all of those things happening at the same time. I think losing weight, having higher energy levels, so training a little bit harder gives me the ability to beat my PBs. And I beat my PB again the other day in a workout that I do. I do a chin-up and a push-up workout. That was taking me probably 25 minutes when I first started. The other day I did it in like 14 minutes. So that's a big difference. And that's got to do with me being fitter, me being leaner, being a bit stronger and all of those sorts of things. But hey man, if it's working, I'll do it. I don't like being labeled a vegan. I don't like that word. But that's kind of how I live.
But that's what it is.
That's what it is.
No, I love that. I mean, I've been, not that I'm not a vegan or a vegetarian or anything, but I'm very limited on my red meat and stuff like that. And, but it's just, what a difference, that the way that I feel throughout the years, eating, as well as I possibly can, or at least as well as I feel I need to at this point in my life. And I just feel like I'm enjoying life, and it's nice to be healthy. I always tell people, look, I mean, why make all this money? Why become wealthy? Why, and then you're, 200 pounds overweight and you feel like crap, and you're, always tired, and you don't want to do anything, and your, whole body aches, and it just doesn't make any sense to me. So I'd rather make a lot of money, become wealthy, help a lot of people, and at the same time feel great about my body and my mind and my spirit. So you agree with that?
Absolutely. I would add to that by saying, get your sleep dialed in as well. Work out what your number is. How many hours do you need? Do you need 5 hours, 4 hours, 9 hours, 11 hours? What is it for you? And if you get your sleep dialed in and you get your diet dialed in, you won't have those 2 o'clock lows in the afternoon. You won't fade during the day. You won't be using coffee as a crutch or energy drinks as a crutch. My number is 7. It doesn't matter what time I go to bed. If I go to sleep at 6 o'clock, and as the infantry guy, I could lie down on the ground right here and go to sleep. And if it's the end of the day, I could sleep for exactly 7 hours, no alarm. Exactly. My body clock wakes me up. And I kept a log of that for a little while to see what it was. I discovered what it was. And then, okay, if I'm going to go to bed at 10 o'clock, I'll be awake at 5 o'clock. If I go to bed at 9 o'clock, I'll be awake at 4 o'clock. And literally get up at 4. It seems early, and it really is early. Get up, train for an hour, do some meditation, have some food. All right, I sit down, and it's like, what is it? It's like 6:15 in the morning. Before the world gets going, I've got so much time. Like, can I read a book? I feel guilty for reading a book. I've done so much already. And get your sleep dialed in, get your diet dialed in, and you have unlimited energy for the day is the way I describe that. And it's so unbelievably important to do that. It's I'm lucky. I kind of have to stay in shape. I got a bit of a dicky paratrooper knee, and I have to have an operation on it. And I said to the doctor, I don't want to have an operation. That's not necessarily going to fix it. Might make it worse if you guys go poking around in there. And he goes, well, maybe you should just try and lose a bit of weight. And I thought, well, that's good. What is the weight? If I'm above 94 kilos, I have a really sore knee. I can tell you when the rain's coming, right? I can feel it in my knee like an old grandpa. So I try and keep myself about 90 kilos or a little bit lower. And then I have no knee pain. I can do any activity I want. But it's hard as a 40-year-old guy. My testosterone levels are diminishing. So I've got to be really careful with my diet. I've got to be really careful with sugar and things like that, because it goes straight to my tummy, and you build that belly fat around you like that. So as I cut all of those things out, kept my weight lower, and I got stronger because I was training more and beating my PBs, it just came around in a really positive feedback loop. Get your sleep dialed in as well. Man, it just gives you that ability to perform at a high level for an extended period. It's great.
Very exciting stuff, man. Wow. What an inspirational dude you are, man. This has been so much fun, Rob. I can't wait to reciprocate with you and come on the Go All In podcast. I'd love to be your next guest.
Absolutely.
And you know, but seriously, man, this is good stuff. We want to know, okay, so it's called the Go All In podcast. Everybody's going to subscribe to that. So all my listeners, they're going to subscribe to that. They're going to follow you on Instagram, right? You probably have a YouTube channel. So can you tell us about that? How do we get a hold of you, man?
Pretty easy. Just go to goallin.com.au, and all the socials are there in the header of that website. So probably the preferred place actually to connect is on LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. There's probably 10,000 followers there. It's pretty decent. I don't spend all that much time on Instagram. That feels like young person social media to me. I'm more on Facebook these days. So that's what it is.
Well, it's because I'm so young, man. I'm just sorry. That's
so what it
young,
is, man.
You know, so.
But I do have Instagram. It's all there on the website. You can connect there. And don't forget to pop over to YouTube as well. There's a whole bunch of videos, interviews, some cool stuff over there as well. Just go to youtube.com/goallin.
If there's anything we can ever help you with, you don't ever hesitate. Rob, what a pleasure to meet you. That's it, man. We got it. It's a wrap. And I just want to remind everybody, though, to make sure that, you dream bigger than ever, but make sure that you do it now. God bless. We'll see you at the top.